You're listening to Season 2 of Beyond Insights, your go-to podcast for all things accounting, business, and technology.
Unsure how to improve your leadership skills, or whether you're suited to being a leader to begin with? Looking for ways to build a stronger team or take better risks? Then stay tuned.
From cybersecurity, blockchain, and AI innovations to sustainability, employee retention, and work-life balance, we've got you covered.
We speak to knowledgeable and insightful guests from varied backgrounds, industries, and locations from all around the globe.
From this multiplicity of thought, we strive to find solutions to our most urgent business problems.
Whether you're a small business owner, an accountant, entrepreneur, or even a young professional looking to progress, this podcast is for you.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's dive right in and go beyond insights.
Welcome back to Beyond Insights, the podcast where we dive deep into the strategies that truly drive success. I'm your host, Wenzi, and today we're going to be tackling a topic that's on every business leader's mind: creating high-performing revenue teams. We're not just talking about hitting targets, we're talking about building sustainable, thriving teams that deliver consistent results without burning out. And to help us in the discussion, I'm very excited to be joined by Matt Lowry, the Chief Revenue Officer at ApprovalMax. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So just to get us started, Matt, could you tell us a bit about yourself and how you actually ended up at ApprovalMax?
Yeah, 100%. So my name's Matt, as you know, Chief Revenue Officer at ApprovalMax, originally British Canadian, which explains the slightly funky accent to any listeners. Currently based in Dubai, but kind of split time between the UK and Canada growing up. Originally from a legal background, so went to law school in Manchester. Love Manchester, if anyone's listened from there. Great city. And then after about a year and a half in the law, working in-house for a listed tech company in the UK, decided, teach their own, but not for me, basically. Wanted to be in the driving seat a little bit more rather than in a more advisory role. So made the switch to become head of customer experience at that PLC. So everything from really small contracts, kind of like £50 a month, all the way up to multi-million pound contracts, FTSE 100 companies, which was quite a learning curve, which is great. And then from there, moved to a app in the Zero ecosystem, a reporting and forecasting app, and grew that in the UK for several years. And then knew the ApprovalMax team before, of course, just small space in the ecosystem, as anyone who's been to a ZeroCon is aware. So knew it was a good product, knew people used it, and then they approached me about the role, and I couldn't turn it down. So I've been here for a little over 2 years now and enjoying every moment of it.
Amazing. And for those who don't know, could you tell us a bit about ApprovalMax? Like, what is it that ApprovalMax does?
Yes, we're a financial controls tool. So we're essentially like a workflow engine, and that's our key USP. So we operate in the accounts payable and accounts receivable space. So to use a more practical example, and I'll tie it to Xero, which is one of the GLs that we integrate with. You can pull your kind of bills and POs and other financial documents from Xero, put it through a robust, like multi-tier, multi-layered approval process, and then it goes back into Xero, so the person hitting pay knows that it's been approved properly. So if you picture back in the day, you're printing something off and going to someone's desk and get signed, or faxing it, like that, it eliminates the need for that. Right now, most people do email ping pong, so you're chasing Matt or Wenzi for approval for something. So we take all that out, everything's time-stamped, audited, so we go a long way in reducing fraud in that regard. And we really kind of automate and speed up that approval process that lets finance teams, whether it's like an external accountant or an in-house CFO or financial controller for that matter, really be more strategic with finance, because everything's been approved and they can really lean into the working capital side to pay what needs to be paid whenever's best for the company, not just paying it really quickly. We operate in a lot of different markets, so UK, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, US and Canada, probably the main 6. And we go with Xero, QuickBooks Online, and NetSuite.
Amazing. And then slightly more informally, what's something that might surprise people about you?
So probably the thing that's probably most surprising is my main hobby, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt.
Oh, wow.
Started in 2012. I've trained actually on every continent except for Antarctica, but I don't think they've got a gym there. So I think that doesn't quite count in terms of the tick box exercise. But yeah, that's my main hobby outside of work. Try and compete every now and then, but obviously comes up against the day job in terms of priorities occasionally. But yeah, that's what I like to do for fun outside of work.
Amazing. Amazing. So every continent which you can, you've trained on.
Yeah, just about. It makes for bulky luggage, packing like a gi. They weigh about like 1.5 to 2 kilos, just if anyone's not aware. So it does take up a fair bit of space in the suitcase, but worth it for a fun fact anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a great fact. Awesome. So, I mean, getting into the topic of today's conversation, when you're looking to bring someone into a revenue generating role, what are some of the non-negotiables? So, are there certain traits, are there skills, or maybe even an energy that you absolutely look for?
So to say I, compared to others that I've seen in the space, probably under index for logos and experience. So if they worked at like a particular company, I don't really care. And if they have 10 years experience versus two, like I also don't really care. I like to over index on attitude. So if someone's got the right energy they're bringing to it, they're super proactive, that to me is telling me that they're coachable. And you can coach how to do a good discovery call. You can coach how to be customer centric as a CSM, for instance. You can get experience on the job essentially. You can't teach a good attitude. So that proactivity is something which we really look for. One of my best AEs actually ever was fresh out of high school. I think he was like 16 or 17.
Oh, wow.
And again, big learning curve, had never sold anything in his life, but had the right attitude, put the work in and put big numbers on the board and moved on to a great next role in his sales career. So definitely the attitude side of it. The other thing I'd say in terms of more specifically during the recruitment cycle, I love when candidates prospect to me. So like there's a cold call, there's like multi-threading. I'm getting LinkedIn messages from them. They don't get asked to do something, but they come prepared with a presentation. Because if they're being proactive during that interview, it's a really good indicator of how proactive they'll be with a prospect. Because everyone prepares for interviews. They really want to do well. Obviously, they want the job. If they're kind of half-assing that, they're not going to put all the effort in for every single prospect or customer they're reaching out to.
Absolutely. Love that. And sort of following on from that, beyond the resume that you'll receive from a potential candidate, how do you really get to know them? Do you have any favorite interview questions, or do you have sort of any techniques that you use to truly reveal who they are, if they'd be a good culture fit?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Particularly in a remote environment when you're kind of zooming someone from the other side of the world. But there's a few things which we ask. So one's just kind of almost more on the human side. So not even to tell if they're a good fit or not. But I love asking people what they do outside of work, because they can kind of breathe out, relax a little bit, talk about, their spouse and kids, or the dog walks they do, or the sports or kind of quirky hobbies that they have, which is awesome. So definitely like to do that just to show that it's not all about business. It is about bringing your true self to work, which I think is super important. On the managerial side, there's a question I like to ask, which is if I could anonymously poll like 10 of your old reports from across your entire career, what would like the main themes be? And it's quite interesting. So you ask someone, like a manager in particular, how they manage, that they kind of view it through their prism, naturally so. But then sometimes when you ask them that question, they kind of have a slightly different answer. And it's not necessarily a wrong answer, but it's interesting to see how they kind of can approach that and understand that their view is slightly different to the view of their old employees, essentially. And it's kind of anonymous exercise. So yeah, that's quite interesting as well.
Nice. I love that. And so I'm sure lots of listeners will know the pressure of those first few weeks. So from your perspective, how do you typically approach onboarding so that new hires feel like they're supported, that they're empowered, and I think really importantly, that they become productive members of the team quite quickly?
So we do some things which are probably fairly standard, like the textbook buddy system. You come in, you've got someone you can speak to without feeling pressure that you're asking a stupid question to your boss or anything. I think that is important to do. We've got almost like a program essentially. So I view you'll hear a lot of sports references throughout this entire thing, by the way. So I view like any team, but particularly revenue team, kind of like a sports team, but a North American one with a salary cap, and like there's like a draft and all that kind of stuff. So you have to make sure you have the right combination of people, and that the bar is set pretty high, and the onboarding is the same really. So it's not just, hey, here's a list of numbers, dial, because clearly not going to work. There's a revenue handbook, which is fairly long. It's kind of north of 50 pages in a Google Doc, which can be a bit overwhelming. We've got a more brief kind of playbook by role. So if you come in as a SDR, an AE, CSM, whatever the role is, you can have that specific playbook, which is typically kind of south of eight pages, and a lot of it's more visual in terms of the training. And we also have solutions engineers who are product experts. Anyone in the kind of ecosystems we work in, probably see them on a lot of our webinars. So Alex and Justin, they end up doing a lot of demos to each new recruit, even if they're not actually customer facing. So our RevOps team do the same thing, just so they have that base level of understanding. And then they go back, and each new recruit will then demo the solutions engineer, then their manager, and then me. It all within like a 5-6 week window, just to make sure that base level of product understanding, but more crucially, how that ties to customer pain point and customer impact all ties together. Beyond that, because I think there's a lot of focus on onboarding and ramping, and rightly so, like it makes sense. And I think proactivity, again, just back to my earlier point, is really important there. I think training goes beyond that. I think too many companies end post ramp. Okay, like you're ramped now, Wednesday, hope you hit target, off you go type thing, right? We actually, again, take the more sports approach to it. So we have several calls every week, which are like just practice calls, like internal role plays, internal coaching cadences, call reviews in front of your peers, which kind of creates that culture of raising the bar, but everyone's kind of pulling together, which I think is super, super important for any new person coming into the business. Certainly during onboarding, but definitely beyond it, because we don't want to stop investment just because they've been with us for 3 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. So talking more on the side of sort of culture and putting together teams, how, for those listening, can you create a high performance culture that doesn't necessarily sacrifice, human values?
It's a balancing act, not going to lie, going to be candid. Obviously targets go up, and depending on the profile of the people in the team, that can either be motivating or slightly demoralizing. So you have to kind of manage that quite carefully. I've always been of the opinion that actually creating people into high performers and showing that they can hit increasingly stretching targets and grow to get there is actually really doing them the biggest favor. And they might not realize it at the time, but I want everyone who enters the ApprovalMax revenue engine to come out the other side, hopefully getting a great next job and everything, but a better sales rep, a better CSM, a better RevOps person, etc. So I think that's really important to bear in mind as leaders. Like being just nice for the sake of being nice isn't actually helping the person in the long run. Having said that, you do have to keep the human factor front of mind, as you're saying. So, there's a few examples I can cite here, but an example is quota relief. So if someone's going on holiday for a week or two, and the quota is the same quota, that's quite hard for them to hit. And then they're stressed out on their holiday. They should be spending time with the family or on the beach in Cancun or whatever. And they're really stressed out because they're going to not make their commission check that month. So giving them the quota relief shows that, you do care about the holiday. You want it to be a legitimate holiday, and that you can balance the high performance culture with the ability to give them that holiday so they can rest up and go towards it. The other thing is kind of working hours. So we've got core working hours naturally. I encourage all my direct reports, like, go to the gym at lunch. I don't mind. Is it more than an hour? Yeah. Not an issue for me. Like, go do what you need to do so that you're getting your health in and you're prioritizing at your family. There's a school run sometimes, which is 4 to 5. It's not after 5. No issues. Because I know that if you invest in them, they'll come back and do work around that, and they'll find it a much nicer place to work. And that's what you want, a nice place to work that is high performance, hitting targets and growing.
100%. I mean, honestly, I couldn't agree more. I think just for the second, we're going to take a quick interlude to hear a bit about Sift.
This podcast is brought to you by Sift Analytics. Sift Analytics is an interactive and collaborative financial reporting tool that helps you generate beautiful reports, forecasts, and consolidations in just a few clicks. Sift helps you increase revenue, reduce costs, save time, and look professional. It is also enhanced by AI-powered insights that help you go from data to decisions in no time. Want to find out more? Visit our website at siftanalytics.com to start a 14-day free trial today.
So continuing on the topic of culture and composing a team generally, I wanted to ask you, Matt, about the unique world of sales and customer success teams. So on the surface, to some people, they might seem that they have very different vibes, but in your experience, what are some similarities that you've observed in those subcultures?
I think for the truly great sales and CS reps and sales and CS teams, there's actually not much difference. Of course, there's going to be some slight differences, like there's a sales cycle on the sales side, but CS cycle, doesn't really matter. But in general, I think if you have a good sales person, we'll just pick on the AE role for now, they're going to be customer centric, and it's about finding a solution to that prospect's problem. And then if you transpose that into the CS world, it's kind of the same thing. So they're already paying you, but particularly for SaaS, they can stop paying you at any moment. So if you don't help them solve that problem and get value from the product to solve that pain point, they're not going to keep paying you the money. So it's all about the consultative sale to make sure that you're being customer centric. I think a lot of the stereotype is, a kind of used car salesman, sell whatever you can and post sale, not your problem. That doesn't matter. But, the good AEs don't see it that way. And you can also structure comp plans actually to have that. So we've got a clawback. So if anyone signs up and, 2 months later, they've churned, we claw that back from the commission check just to make sure that there's none of that kind of stereotypical sales stuff going on, which there isn't at ApprovalMax, thankfully. But I feel like those fundamental principles on both sides of the fence are important. Now, there's probably a few slight nuances, like a CSM should be more helpful, I think, in terms of, not that an AE isn't, but rather than saying, hey, here's how you can upgrade from this to this, it should be more about, okay, how do we get you more value from your current subscription level, rather than focus on the upsell. And you see this when you go up market, particularly to mid-market and enterprise, that you sign I won't name names, you sign a CRM contract, right? And then the next year goes up by 10, 15, 20%. Hang on a second, like, why is it going up so much? And like that education piece is kind of lacking because they have that market presence. So again, at ApprovalMax, I think for SMB sales in general, it's really important to make sure that people are addressing the pain point continually, both on the sales side and the CS side. So slightly different application, but the same fundamental principles apply to both of those sub-teams.
Fantastic. And because you've just touched on it towards the end, how would you suggest to leaders that they can sort of foster synergy between the two teams rather than having them operate almost in silos?
The short answer is make it one team, but I know there's still nuances to access sub-teams, right? So I think a couple of tactics I can reference that we've implemented at ApprovalMax, for example. So every week there's a pod call. So everyone in the revenue team who's part of that region, so we have EMEA, APAC, and the Americas, jumps on the call, and there's a set agenda. So they share learnings, they share any new deals that they've won, and any kind of key notes to hand over to the CSM. So they're kind of viewing it as more of a partnership rather than an us and them relationship. Some of the other things, I know I just referenced the comp plan, but it's the same thing. So it's none of this, oh, actually, I'm fighting for that deal, I'm fighting for that deal. No, any expansion a month or two after the sign up, it's 50-50. Like, work together, guys. Go, kind of make the customer happy. So there's none of this internal infighting, which doesn't make any sense at all really to do, because we should be super unified.
Love that. And while we're sort of moving on to the topic of customer centricity, can you share from your perspective how businesses can weave together customer centricity into their revenue processes?
I think a big part of it, I mean, it's kind of already in the question, but like it has to be baked into the process.
Yeah.
So I'll use an example. So a lot of businesses, particularly when you view it as an entire revenue function, they use the funnel, traditional funnel. So it goes kind of, awareness, MQL, PQL, whatever, commit, opportunity, etc. And then it bought, and then there's nothing. Just good luck.
Yeah.
That inherently is not customer centric. You're saying, actually, I'm going to get your first money. Maybe it's an annual contract, but what you do beyond that in terms of like onboarding, adoption, like value realization, it is not baked into the process at all. That's clearly a gap. So, I mean, a lot of your listeners probably know Winning by Design, but they've got like a bow tie model, which is essentially like a double funnel. There's a whole CS side of that, which we build out as well internally, just to make sure that everything is getting good fit customers to that next stage. I think speaking of fit customers, like the other one is the ICP, so the ideal customer persona. So if someone's not on your ICP, like you probably should tell them, right? Like you shouldn't be, oh, hey, yeah, we're a really good fit. Like for example, we could have someone doing it like a bit of a quirky workaround with ApprovalMax, but if they want to sign up, okay, that's fine. But we'll probably just tell them, actually, this is quite an unusual use case. Like it might not be the best fit for you, because if you sell it to them, all that's going to happen is they're going to churn quicker than usual, and then you're in a problem in terms of your churn metrics. So everyone kind of loses, and the customer certainly loses in that example, because they're back to the drawing board, doing all the beauty parade of all the demos, etc. So I think baking it into the process is important. There's also some other things you can do that we have it as a value at ApprovalMax, just like championing the customer. So we have a quarterly award, actually just peer voted within the revenue team for the person who displays that value the most in the quarter, which makes sure that it's top of mind and kind of fosters that team camaraderie, which is super, super important.
Amazing. Well, I mean, that ties nicely to my next question, which is beyond just solving the problems, how would you define exceptional customer service within the context of a revenue team?
I guess it depends. So on the sales side, I think it comes back to like good qualification, but also like correct qualification. Like there's a lot of times where so when I took over the team a few years ago, we used Band, which is very seller centric and not customer centric. Oh, what's your budget? Like, do you have authority? Like, kind of a weird question, right? Do you have authority? So like whenever you go through that acronym, it's clearly been designed for the seller and not for the buyer. So we use Spice to get another Winning by Design kind of one, where you're understanding what's the impact to that customer, and you really kind of hone in on that, which is super important, because look, if there's no pain point or impact as a sales rep, you shouldn't be selling it, like just plain and simple. And I think that is a sign of good service and doing right by the prospect before they become a customer as a rep. Now, on the post-sale side of things, or the CS side of things, it's a little bit more interesting, because whilst that principle still applies, of course, are you getting recurring impact still? Are we still helping with that pain point? Obviously, super important to keep top of mind and ensure the customer's getting.
Yeah.
But there's also just the more like the helpfulness. So I personally hate when I'm a consumer somewhere and I email for support, and it takes a week for someone to get back to me. Like that's clearly just not on. So again, I think that speed of response and helpfulness of response is very important, and something which is key to keep top of mind anytime you're in a customer facing role.
Amazing. Amazing. So what we typically do when we're sort of closing out some of these pods is we go through a couple rapid fire questions. So for these, honestly, don't think too much. Just first thing that comes to your mind. Okay.
Sure, let's do it.
So without being biased, so we're going to exclude Sift from this, but what's one piece of software that you just can't live without?
I should probably mention, something AI cutting edge or whatever here, but honest answer is personally Spotify. I just love Spotify. Listen to podcasts, listen to music. Like it is great. Yeah, so it should be AI focused, but I'm going to say Spotify.
Great answer. Listen, I'm sure plenty of listeners will agree with you on that one. Um, and next, what's the best book you've read recently? Or podcast, since you've mentioned podcast, what's the best book or podcast you've read or listened to recently?
So I'll give you a few answers to this to hedge my
Go
bets.
for
So
it.
personal book, super heavy, like not business related at all, but it's called A Little Life, really good. Would recommend it to anyone who's into their kind of literary fiction. On podcast, I'd say Revenue Leadership. I'll give you a more businessy answer for a business podcast here, but Revenue Leadership by Pavilion and Top Line, I think it is. Really good revenue insights for any B2B SaaS leaders.
Love that. Going back into our conversation that we had today, if there's one overarching piece of advice that you could share with someone looking to build or dramatically improve their revenue team, what would it be?
Treat it like a sports team. So there's practice. You have to turn up. You're only as good as your worst player on the pitch or the rink or whatever, and make sure that everyone's aware of those standards. And you play for getting back to North America, you play for the logo on the front of the shirt, not the name on the back of the shirt.
Love that. Love that. And then just lastly, if there's one thing that you'd like listeners to take away from our conversation today, what would it be?
One thing's tough. I'd say customer centricity. Keep it top of mind. A lot of people pay it lip service, but like review your CI calls, review your processes. Like, is it actually truly customer centric, or is it just a sticker you're placing on the company?
Love that. Perfect. Well, Matt, once again, I think this conversation has been really, really insightful for myself. I really hope that business leaders or even just people who are interested in growing revenue teams take a lot away from the session. For those of you listening, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond Insights. I hope this episode has given you some, powerful and actionable insights to take to your own revenue teams. And until next time, keep building those blockbuster teams.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast.
Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now.
And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast.
That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.